Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for the social media and the job search webinar brought to you by the BGSU Career Center. We're going to talk about a couple of different things today, specifically understanding the purpose and function of social media for professional purposes, and specifically for networking and finding job opportunities. We're going to help you understand the importance of a personal brand and how we are representing ourselves online. We're going to help you develop some skills to utilizing social media in the job search, so how you can manipulate those specific platforms to find out about job opportunities, and then also how to increase one's personal network through social media. And we're going to specifically be breaking down components of the job search by each platform, going over specifically the big three: Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So something that's really important to kind of cover before we go into all of these different things is how important social media has become in our society these days. And for those of you who are maybe a little bit unfamiliar with the actual term of social media, the definition is listed here for you. But essentially, to sum it up, social media is a web or mobile-based platform or type of technology which allows people to communicate with each other, communicate between people, individuals, among organizations, communities, in a variety of different settings. And essentially, it facilitates communication. It's not meant to replace it. And so that is why social media can be a very useful tool in terms of increasing your personal and professional network, and also when you think about the job search. So what is really interesting is this concept, and there's a book out there called Socialnomics by Eric Qualman, who is a best-selling author, and he has created this YouTube video that explores the concepts of how social media has become so extremely prevalent in our society today. Now, I'm not going to play the video for you because you have access to it via YouTube, and if you're interested in it, I definitely recommend having a look at it. So again, that video is called Socialnomics by Eric Qualman, and you should be able to find it if you just search on YouTube or through Google. And if you're interested in reading, it's a wonderful book. And he also has a new book out now called Digital Leader, which is another great read if you're interested in this concept of digital identity, specifically as social media specifically becomes more important in our society. Okay, so before we go into all the different components of these platforms, why does this matter? Why is this important? It's important because 92% of companies actually use social media networks for recruiting. And to break it down by what platform, 86% of recruiters are using LinkedIn, and then 60% are using Facebook and Twitter respectively. And then to kind of flip it on the other side, 86% of employers say that a positive online reputation influences their hiring decisions, and that 79% of employers will review an applicant's online profile or information, and 1 out of 3 employers have rejected someone based off of something that they have found online, which just demonstrates how employers are tapped into these platforms, and why it's also very important to make sure that our online profiles are well representative of our true selves and of our professional selves. So kind of leading into that, it's important to think about your personal brand, right? And I always like to ask these questions. What does your current profile say about you if someone were to pull up your Twitter feed? What do you want your profile to say about you? What do you want an employer to think about your reputation as they view your digital identity online? And a great way to kind of see this and see what an employer might see is to simply just Google yourself and ask yourself, do you like what you see? And is there anything to see? Because not having anything is just as bad as having something potentially negative out there about you. Because employers like to see that you have been involved in the community and that you've been recognized for your accomplishments. And for specifically those who are students and are in college, this is a great opportunity to make your name on campus. And are you coming up in campus news articles for contributing to great philanthropic events? Is it because you're a part of student government? Are you an orientation leader? Are you a resident advisor? Are your profiles coming up? Those are things that employers like to see. And so if there's nothing there, you might want to consider about what can I do to really make a name for myself. The other thing here is an acronym that I like to use before you post anything, before you tweet, before you post on Facebook, before you use Tumblr, whatever platform is most important to you. Think before you post, and kind of breaking that down. T, is it true? Is what you're posting true? H, is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it even necessary? Are you sharing quality information? And is it kind? And you would be very surprised about the negative things that students and just people in general will post on social media, specifically even about their job search process, maybe berating a current boss. Oh my gosh, my job sucks, complaining. You're not going to look like a very positive or competent candidate if those are the things that are coming up in your Twitter feed. So just some things to kind of think about how you're representing yourself and what others might think when they read your posts. This is another good illustration of how you might kind of think about what your personal brand says in terms of what you're sharing on Facebook for your profile picture or just pictures in general. Now, in both of these pictures, the girls are not doing anything wrong. And the picture on the left, it looks like it's Halloween. The girls don't look like they're intoxicated. They might be at a party, and they're not doing anything entirely crazy. But the difference between the picture on the left and the picture on the right is that the picture on the right says, I'm involved on campus. I'm in a sorority. And not only am I in a sorority, I also participate in philanthropy. And you can see from their t-shirts they're at a Relay for Life. And so you can kind of see the difference here is that if I'm an employer, what am I going to think about the person on the left? And what am I going to think about the people on the right? And unfortunately, the people on the left could be the best people, the best candidate, the most qualified. But unfortunately, employers can only gather so much information based off of what we share. And we have to think about the types of conclusions that they might make. So this is a good illustration of the different types of conclusions someone might make based upon what they might see on your profile. So a couple of different ways to kind of think about your brand and how you might want to try to communicate that is to ask yourself these three different questions. So what differentiates you? So write down 3 words that best describe what is unique about you. And then from there, thinking about your value. What sets you apart? Why would someone value what you have to contribute? So ask yourself, what do you offer that employers need in your career field? And then lastly, leadership. What have you achieved? What are others saying about you? So if you use these 3 key points, you can begin to gather somewhat of a picture that employers might see or that you might want to begin to communicate to employers. And so this next part is when you write all of the words down that you wrote down based upon the questions that I just asked, pick the top 3 words that resonate with you, and then voila, you might have a personal brand. And then ask yourself, do your profiles reflect that? So for example, and I'll go back to this just to illustrate, for maybe a student that's involved on campus, is maybe a leader, really involved in their major, this is maybe something that they would come up with. They might say, well, what makes me really unique? Well, I'm very passionate, I'm outgoing, and I'm very caring. Okay, so those are 3 words. Then what value? Well, they might say, well, I'm an extremely great educator, I'm really good at teaching others. Okay. And then what have I achieved? What are others saying about me? Well, I've definitely been able to contribute to my community, make a difference for people during orientation or, as a leader on campus. And so when you're beginning to kind of put together all those words and you kind of summarize it, you might get kind of something like engaged or passionate individual who specializes and focuses on educating others and building community with their colleagues or something like that. So you can kind of see how by writing down simple phrases or simple words, you can kind of begin to build this picture. And then once you have this picture, how do you want to communicate that, right? How do you want to say that to an employer, not only through your social media profiles, but also in person too? Okay. So let's go ahead and break it down by each of the different platforms. So we have LinkedIn, we have Facebook, and we have Twitter. So let's start with LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is generally your professional network. It's going to be people that maybe were your former coworkers, former supervisors, faculty members, staff members, classmates, people in your student organization. So it's really important to not only make sure that you have a LinkedIn profile so you can begin building this professional network via this online platform, but it's also important to make sure that you complete your profile because you're over 40 times more likely to get contacted by an employer with a complete profile. And so that's very beneficial. It's also important to look at others' profiles to get in a good idea of what looks good, and see what others are sharing on their profiles. What does an ideal profile look like? If this is something that you're interested in, feel free to utilize our YouTube page. We also have a webinar all about LinkedIn, so we can share lots of good information there. Also joining networking groups related to your profession or industry, reconnecting with past mentors and professionals, so connecting with those people who could be of a benefit to you, asking questions and consulting with colleagues. So once you're a part of these networking groups, or once you're a part or once you're connected to people who are in your professional network, you can ask them for advice or even ask for informational interviews. And informational interviews are great because they allow you to ask questions about the industry or the field you might be considering going into. And then again, you can also post articles and discussions pertaining to your online brand. So not only is it important to create a profile, make that profile look good, begin to connect with people, but it's also important to utilize this and become engaged in the community. So if you're interested in learning more about LinkedIn, feel free to view our webinar or attend one of our upcoming workshops about it because it's very, very great to use once you know all of the different advantages that this platform can offer you. Is it beneficial to make sure that you're asking for informational interviews, but you know the difference between a first and a second connection. So a first connection is that person who is in your immediate network, you automatically know them. But your second connection is someone who is, once removed from you, so your friend might know them. And your second network or your second connections are the most beneficial people to be asking for informational interviews because your network, you may not necessarily know someone who works in IT, for example, but someone in your network may know someone who works in IT. And so it's always really good to ask your friends and family and colleagues and say, oh, I noticed that you were connected to this person. I would love to ask them a few questions. Do you mind introducing me or passing along their contact information, so on and so forth. So that can be a really great way to kind of utilize social media that way. But also following experts, following employers and recruiters, making sure that you're seeing what people are talking about, things like that. But I will reiterate, though, and really drive home that networking may start virtually, and you may utilize this tool to connect with people, but it should and can, or it can and should end in the real world, in the sense that you don't just email people back and forth and only do your networking on LinkedIn. You should definitely try to meet these people for coffee or have a phone conversation with them because you can build much more rich relationships that way. Okay. So let's talk about Facebook. So Facebook is your personal network. So whereas LinkedIn is a professional, Facebook is your personal. And the reason why it's your personal is that we just tend to kind of share more about ourselves on this platform. So ways that you can utilize Facebook to your advantage in terms of like job searching and things like that is mostly editing your privacy setting, cleaning up your profile, not posting things about past employers or how the job search is going, keeping yourself very private. But you could also let people know that you're on the market because, again, you never know who in your network, your personal network, could be advantageous to you. So it's a very good idea to just let people know what you're looking for and that you're on the market, and you would be surprised about the number of connections you could potentially have. Okay, so Twitter. Twitter is definitely a little bit easier to use in terms of actually finding out about job opportunities. And so ways that you can utilize Twitter, which is your public network, because our feeds tend to be very, very public and we're using hashtags and engaging in great conversations. The ways that you can use that to your advantage is through following relevant hashtags related to your career interests, following conference or event back channels. So a lot of times if there's a conference in your field, they're going to be utilizing certain hashtags, and so you can kind of follow those and see what people are talking about, and learn by lurking. So if you really admire someone or really admire a professional in your field, go ahead and follow them and just learn by looking at their profile. You don't even have to tweet back at them or retweet them or even favorite them, but you can absolutely learn from them. But if you are a little bit more outgoing, participate in Twitter chats. And then the last kind of point too is to make sure that you're using your real name in your profile, and use your bio as a potential job pitch. So rather than saying, oh, I am the #1 football star from my varsity high school days, and I'm great with the ladies, and my name is like football star 577, that doesn't communicate anything of worth to an employer. So using your name and utilizing that bio portion to say maybe that you're a student, maybe what you're studying, or maybe what you hope to do in the future, because this is such a public profile, it's definitely going to be the thing that employers have the most access to. The other way that you can use Twitter is through tuning in and finding opportunities. So again, like I said, you can follow those event back channels or those certain hashtags, but you can also follow our experts, job chats, recruiters, companies, and companies for tips, information, and even job postings. And oftentimes, if you meet like a recruiter or a company at one of the BGSU Career Center's Fall or Spring Expos, oftentimes they're going to be posting opportunities via Twitter. The other thing is to make sure that you follow the BGSU Career Center at BGSU Careers, because we also post a lot of relevant information to the job search, as well as potential job postings that we have in WorkNet or that we know of from recruiters. So make sure that you follow us to kind of stay up to date on all of those things. Here are just a few examples of Twitter handles that you could follow. My favorite one is the Daily Muse. I think that they share a lot of great relevant articles and infographics and just quick little reads related to the job search that are very applicable to students these days and to those who are maybe just beginning their job search. And so it's very geared towards young professionals, and so that's one of my favorite websites. But all of these Twitter handles are really, really great. And then also these hashtags. Definitely following these to get plugged into potential job opportunities, or just to get kind of involved in the job search chat. Again, just a little plug for the BGSU Career Center. If you want all of those great, wonderful resources all in one place, make sure you follow us at BGSU Careers or utilize the hashtag HireFalcons. And just a few more points just to kind of drive home before we wrap up. Remember, 80% of jobs are found through networking, and networking happens via social media. It can happen via LinkedIn when you're making connections with your first network or your second network. Remember, 92% of recruiters will check your social media pages. So clean up those privacy settings on Facebook. Think about what you're posting. Think about that personal brand. And remember, students can and have found internships and jobs through LinkedIn. So not only making sure that you're connecting with people on LinkedIn, but making sure that your profile is complete, you're following the right people, and you're articulating your skills in the best way possible. And again, if you want more help on that, make sure to view our LinkedIn webinar. And that's all we had for you today. So if you have any further questions or are interested more in how you can utilize social media in your job search, feel free to give us a call at 419-372-2356. Thank you.